to get the,
Yes.
Ready? I'm ready. Okay, good evening. Since 5:30 p.m., the Board of Education has been in closed session, meeting on the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, the sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment contracts, litigation when an action affecting on our behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives. Kind of a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion. We are in open session. Good evening and welcome to the regular Board of Education business meeting for September 8th. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Sure. Brand new. President Susan Crotty, Kristen Fitzgerald, Susan Price, Terry Fielden, Jackie Romberg, Donna Wanke, and Mike Gaffney.
Okay, could you all please stand up and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda is good news.
Good news. Just wanted to briefly thank members of the community, both individuals as well as a variety of community organizations who participated and partnered with District 203 in our first Welcome to 203 picnic, which quickly turned into assembly at the Naperville Central cafeteria due to weather. That being said, weather did not seem to have any impact whatsoever on the great event that we held. 600 plus community members attended our event and took advantage of meeting new friends in District 203, connecting with District 203 and many of its families, but then also getting access to a number of community resources. So to call it a success, I think, is an understatement. Well received, many positive comments and feedback. We'll solicit opinions from participants about future events, but it looks like something that we'll continue to do. So that was a great event and great news there.
Okay, it was a good time. Certainly, there was a lot of good community groups there. I enjoyed talking to quite a few of them as well. And I know most of the members of the Board of Education attended, so I think that was very positive too as well. And they spent a lot of time circulating around the tables. In particular, Kristen hit pretty much every table, I think, in the room. So,
one thing I noticed was it was really exciting to see how many of the families were new families. I know that was the goal, and we wanted returning families as well, but it was I thought maybe 75% of the families that I talked to in the cafeteria were new.
Okay. Any other comments by the board? On to public comment. I don't have any cards in front of me right now for public comment. Are there any people in the audience who would like to address the board on anything? It's 3 minutes per individual and 5 minutes for a group. Okay. Then we'll go on to communications. We have one student ambassador. So do you have a report prepared for us tonight? Then go ahead.
Kevin, can I interrupt you real quick? Just for our community who might be watching, would you introduce yourself a little bit to the community? Just tell us who you are. You're in school at the Naperville Central, and a little bit about what you're involved in.
Okay.
Thanks.
My name is Kevin Angel. I'm a member of the debate team at Naperville Central. I'm a senior. And aside from debate team, I'm a member of the Wall Street Society, which is Naperville Central's investment club. I'd like to begin my report by first discussing our Chromebook rollout, which took place at the beginning of the year. It worked fairly smoothly. There were a few technical issues as far as accessing Canvas and Infinite Campus on the first week, but after the first week, it was all smoothed out, and as far as I can tell, it's all good to go. Teachers are utilizing it in classes as much as they can, and I found it to be very useful.
I note the device that you're using right now, by the way.
Yes,
Very good.
it's the district-issued Chromebook. So.
And our director, Arendra, was over there smiling happily.
I'd also like to address how the second week of school, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but Central was picketed by a group of pro-life protesters, both before and after school. It caused a decent bit of controversy and discussion at Central because many students disagreed with them, as well as a lot of the signs that they displayed were very graphic, so that disturbed some of the students. As far as people at Central know, and I know, there weren't very many, if any, altercations between the protesters and students. There's one that I can think of, and that's unclear on who initiated that. So there were some interactions and a couple screaming and one screaming match, but that we don't really know many details about that. But overall, it was a disturbance, but wasn't too big of one. In addition, National Merit Scholars were notified at Naperville Central and Naperville North last week. The names publicly are released tomorrow, I believe in the middle of the day, noon, so those will be available then. And then finally, I'd like to conclude by saying that Naperville Central has created a new testing center where students can make up tests instead of having to work with the individual teacher to find a time that would work for both of them. It should give both students and teachers more flexibility in making up tests. Thank you.
So on the Chromebook, has anybody forgotten to charge their Chromebook so far coming into class?
Yes. There have been several cases where kids haven't, but since a lot of students bring their charger to school, it's generally not an issue because they share chargers and plug it into the wall outlet. So.
All right, cool. Thank you, Kevin, and welcome. I look forward to more reports. Superintendent staff school reports.
Gina, do you want to come on and work your way up to and Catherine's going to come with you? Okay. Just a reminder for the community and also for the board is we're back in school session now. Monthly, we will bring one of our schools forward to share with the Board of Education update on their work around their Rising Star School improvement plans. And we are pleased this month and this year to kick it off with Riverwoods. And Gina Baumgartner, principal, and Catherine Cahoon, assistant principal, will be here to update the Board of Education on some of their school improvement work. So, Gina, take it away when you're ready.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity to share our school improvement goals, for we're always striving to do better work within our school community. What happened?
As we develop our school improvement plan, we keep the mission of District 203 as well as the Riverwood School mission in mind. Our school mission, created within the early years of Riverwoods, aligns with the district mission to provide students with the skills they can apply throughout their lives, including academic and social-emotional skills, in order to be successful in our global society. To accomplish our mission, we work together in teams throughout Riverwood School and the greater community. As a school, we follow a similar process for developing our school improvement goals, as well as for our teams of professionals in our professional learning communities, or PLCs. All teams begin with an examination of the current available information about a particular student group. Sometimes this examination leads us to develop new assessment tools to provide the missing data. After a thorough analysis of the data, teams develop a plan to address specific gaps or areas in need of strengthening based on the data. The plan includes specific measures to determine its effectiveness. Creating the plan often requires investigation of best educational practices. Once a solid plan with measurable outcomes is developed, it is implemented by the team members. The team then monitors the plan using stepping stone assessments to determine its effectiveness. Adjustments to realign the work toward the intended goal may occur.
Our leadership team, made up of representatives of every specialist and grade level team, begins by looking at large data sets across the school and for student groups to recognize growth and celebration, as well as areas needing further investigation. The grade level teams use this big picture analysis to then hone in on specific areas in the students' learning at their level to support the overall school goal. Leadership team members serve as the conduits of communication between the larger school goal and each of the other team goals. Through this process, we are all working toward the same targets, but at differentiated levels across the school. Research on successful schools shows us that this collaborative team approach of shared leadership helps schools achieve at high levels. The research tells us that setting academic goals alone will not provide continuous improvement for a school. Continuous improvement requires work on fostering a positive school environment with shared beliefs that all students and staff hold each other to high expectations of conduct, collaboration, and academics. Therefore, at Riverwood School, we have developed school improvement goals that not only target our academic achievement, but focus on our school environment. We established our first goal to welcome all families and all programs to Riverwood School. In 2013-14, we welcomed the dual language program to Riverwood School. With the inclusion of the dual language magnet program, 150 new students joined the Riverwoods community. We strive to communicate clearly to all families in English and Spanish. At our front doors, a sign welcomes families and guests in over 20 languages. Morning announcements, newsletters, school signs are in Spanish and English to nurture biliteracy for all. As our school grows with new students and staff members each year, it is important to have established clear school-wide expectations. We are now implementing Pride Stations for all students and staff to gain common understandings of expected actions around our school. Students also design the Pride mural. It is a student-designed and community-painted mural. Our grade level teams designed opportunities for students across grade levels to interact with each other beyond lunch and recess to further include all children. One example of such an opportunity is our Kindergarten Friday Mixers. The kindergarten students rotate in small groups each week to different classes during discovery time. In this way, students meet and build relationships with students beyond their classrooms. These opportunities benefit all community members. To measure our school environment progress, we developed and implemented a common student and staff school climate and culture survey. Based on our student survey results from December 2014, 96% of our students feel safe at school. 93% of our students feel welcome at our school. 96% of our students have friends outside of their classrooms. These were significant, for we want to purposefully have all students feel safe and welcome and foster friendships beyond their classrooms. When we re-administer this survey this year, we'll be able to determine how we've sustained and increased these areas for our students. To further gauge our work in our school climate, we turn to an analysis of our student behavior data from 2013-14 to 14-15. Based on this data, we noticed an 11% decrease from 35% of overall office referrals for verbal acts in 2013-14, down with a decrease of 11% to 24% of office referrals for verbal acts. We also noticed a 9% decrease from 22% of office referrals for noncompliance, down to 13% in 2014-15. An area that grew that made up the difference was an area of non-respect for property, especially in the bathroom with paper towels. We continued our culture climate survey with the entire staff. Staff members took the survey in 2013-14 and 2014-15 school years to provide us with comparative data. From this data, we noticed an increase from 66% to 92% of the staff viewing our school climate as positive. We also noted an increase from 66% to 88% of the staff looking forward to coming to work. Based on these assessment results, as well as the Parent and Staff 5 Essentials and Riverwoods Into the Future forum input, we still have areas for further growth. One area of opportunity we plan to address is student-to-student acts of unkindness or bullying. While we find that many students feel confident to get assistance from a teacher, our community will benefit from positive or proactive approaches to preventing and handling acts of unkindness. In order to address these areas from our school environment data, we have adjusted our school environment goal to go deeper in all efforts. Over the course of this year, we have shared common read-alouds in all classrooms to create proactive responses by standing up to acts of unkindness or bullying. We also are working to develop common definitions of bullying based on the district policy, using kid-friendly terms to demystify what constitutes bullying. We're also providing community education on bullying prevention through assemblies and parent learning opportunities. We'll continue teaching and reinforcing the pride attributes and expectations. We will teach all students appropriate playground activities and behaviors through the Peaceful Playground program. We'll continue to foster our culturally responsive teaching and living practices. And we'll communicate methods of student individual goal setting in academics and social emotional learning. When we first started the new Rising Star school improvement process, we noticed a steady decline in our ISAT math scores over the previous 4 years. For our first year of focusing on data to drive our instruction in 2013-14, we focused on math. Our most successful practice was the development of small, guided math groups to target certain skills based on the student assessment data. In this video clip of students in small, guided math groups, a 4th grade teacher describes the process her team used to differentiate math instruction.
See if you have Chromebook. Why do we trust that it's brilliant?
And in this video, it shows students actually working in small guided math groups with their teacher or an assistant or independently to really target and hone in on the skills that they need. The teacher also described the process of how they looked at different data and how they came to the decisions that they made to target the specific skills. How about if we skip this one at this point? During the spring and summer of 2014, our leadership team received extensive...
Teachers collect data to create small group or individualized learning experiences, which allows for differentiated practice during the math block. Through this, we see higher levels of engagement, as well as receiving direct feedback about the individual progression of skills. Students feel successful within a math rotation structure.
During the spring and summer of 2014, our leadership team received extensive training in the professional learning community process. In 2014-15, we fully committed to professional learning communities across the school. Our 3rd grade team utilized the PLC process to present students with opportunities to travel between the 4 classes, monolingual and dual language classes, for their daily word study time. Not only did this differentiate learning and practice with words for all 3rd graders, it also provided our dual language students with the opportunity to academically interact with students across the grade level. In this video, a 3rd grade teacher describes how his team used the PLC process to differentiate across their grade level for word work.
Words Their Way is the resource that we use to teach word study in a differentiated approach. Our third grade team utilized the walk-to model. We looked at the data as a whole grade level and then formed flexible groups tailored to their individual needs. Each day, students walked to one of the 5 differentiated classes to work at their current ability level. Using ongoing formative assessment, we continuously assessed and regrouped students as they progressed through the Words Their Way program. Using this model allowed for student success in word study and also success for our grade level PLC, since we were meeting and making decisions based on current data. This model not only helps students academically, but also with their social emotional growth.
Overall, our teachers are now more comfortable differentiated for their students in a variety of ways. On our December 2014 differentiation survey, 92% of our teachers deem themselves experts or practitioners with using assessment data to drive their instruction. The remainder of our teachers labeled themselves as novices, but expanding their skills in this area. In 2014-15, we utilized our instructional assistants to differentiate instruction at all grade levels. The instructional assistants were guided by the classroom teachers as determined during their grade level PLCs. Instructional assistants worked with students at all levels for enrichment, interventions, additional practice, and confidence building. Students benefited tremendously from the instructional assistants' work in all content areas. Through increased differentiated practices in math during the 2013-14 school year, our students turned a 4-year downward math slide into positive gains and even surpassed the district growth expectations on ISATs in 2014. In 2013, we were below the district average growth in ISATs for math at 105 and the district at 109, but above the state. In 2014, we exceeded both the district and state averages for growth on ISAT math assessment. During the same time, 86% of our students met or exceeded on the math ISATs. With no ISATs in 2015, we wanted to determine if we continued this upward trend for math, so we analyzed our performance series math data. In 2012-13, 49% of our students met or exceeded their expected growth on the performance math series assessment. In 2013-14, 52% of our students met or exceeded their growth on the performance series math assessment. In 2014-15, 64% of our students met or exceeded their expected growth on the math performance series. While we've seen good growth in math, an area for our future work will be with our students eligible for free and reduced lunches, for they met their growth targets on performance series math assessments at 40%. There has been a steady increase year over year for our students, but there still needs to be an area of focus for us. Through our increased differentiated practices in literacy, including the word study program, guided reading, strategy group work, and individual reading conferences, 87% of our students overall met or exceeded their grade level reading expectations in spring 2015 on the Fontes and Pinnell reading assessment. Our dual language students' English reading skills grew from 59% meeting their grade level expectations in the fall to 65% meeting their grade level targets in spring 2015. While we must keep in mind the students were assessed in English to compare our overall results in English, their reading assessments on a similar assessment but in Spanish showed more growth. Another reading area for further growth we will be addressing is our assessment results for some of our on-grade level and above grade level readers. We've noticed that they're not always consistently increasing their skills over time. Through our teaming and the PLC process, we've seen positive growth trends in both math and reading, yet still continue to promote areas for continued improvement. As a leadership team reviewed these data sets, goals, and associated research, we decided to move toward a goal that included student engagement to truly challenge all students at all levels to inspire their success. In order to reach this goal, we will build reading stamina to sustain purposeful reading time that truly activates student thinking, We'll implement consistent and common early literacy skills for word decoding, develop reading strategies such as the close reading strategies of notating text, interacting with text, linking multiple sources, and questioning text and the author for deeper meaning. Utilize technology to engage students in innovative learning activities in all content areas. Purposefully develop student vocabulary of power terms that cross over content and application. Examine our dual language learning progressions to hit power concepts. Establish and communicate student goal setting methods based on academic and social emotional standards, and align our homework expectations.
The Riverwood School Improvement Plan aligns in multiple areas with the district's blueprint in Focus 2020. Each goal in our plan directly supports a strategic focus area for 2016, 2018, and 2020.
As a community, we have come together and remained together. Now, through our work together, we will guide our students toward life success as continuous learners and confident, proactive community members through our focused, positive, and nurturing school climate.
Thank you. Excellent report.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? Susan?
So Gina and I had the opportunity to meet. That's one of my adopted schools. We had a great conversation, and I did realize that it was the fourth principal at that school since I've been working with them. So I couldn't even remember the first one, which she helped me discover. But one of the things that she shared with me, one of the extraordinary things, could you talk about the bridges that you're building with the dual language program in your school? Because that was really unique and impressive to me.
Sure. I think many of the things that we've done align directly with our first school that we've had. We've worked hard to have the children. First, we had them integrated socially across the grade levels. And then now what we're working on is to have them integrated academically as well as socially. And the Words Their Way work was one example of that. Another thing that we've done is making sure that we have programs before and after school that not only reach them academically, but also reach them so that they're involved in the school community, such as our running club that's free to all students. We've also included our dual language children in activities such as our after-school program for academics, but as well as student council. We've rearranged our student council time to make sure children who ride the bus can join us. We've also included parents in activities such as our bilingual family program, literacy program, where families come in with their children and they read bilingual books and they target a specific language, either English or Spanish. And during the process of reading the books over a course of 10 weeks, they then take a camera home and take pictures of their families, and they develop a photo album using the target language. So if I speak Spanish and my neighbor next to me in the program speaks English, we help each other write our own family book and our own family history.
And could you talk about what you did with the teachers as well so that they were integrated in it? I thought that was fabulous.
Well, when we had a new program join our school, we not only need to have the children part of the process and the families part of the process, but the teachers as well. One of the unique things we did to have our staff integrated is we had some stay-in plays after school where we just invited all of the staff to stay and play games. We played things like hide and seek, if you can believe it, a whole bunch of adults playing hide and seek across the school. We also played some different games like Pictionary, and we had pizza together. But that was a way for us to bond beyond our regular day that we could do with all of the new staff.
And you shared about the professional development that you started teaching some of the teachers.
Mm-hmm. We've offered all of the teachers Spanish classes so that all of our staff has been able to gain some words in Spanish. If they didn't know maybe how to say hello before or how are you doing, now they have at least a base understanding of some of the Spanish common phrases.
And will you also talk about your book that and how that worked? That you write. It's a Riverwoods book that you all read.
So annually we do a one school, one book program, and since the dual language program has joined us, we've always selected a book that we have in English as well as in Spanish so that all of our families can participate. In addition to just reading the book, we create podcasts where our staff will record reading the chapters, and we've done this in English and Spanish. And last year, we included some children from the high school to read chapters, and so it was a neat opportunity for them to join us and just promote reading across all of our families, no matter what language they were using.
And what I didn't get to share with you is I got there a couple minutes early, and I had to sit in the chairs outside her office like I was in trouble. So thank you for your time. It was really a great visit to see what's going on there and how rooms have been repurposed and kind of how we're growing and ebbing and flowing as a district. It was very clear in that school. Thank you.
Okay. Kristen?
So I was your adoptive board member when you set your math goal, and I have to say, looking at your results, it is so exciting to see what you were able to do by setting that goal. That was really exciting to see. I think that I want to make sure I had it correctly, that you were mentioning that within your victory, you're looking at opportunities to grow. And I think I understood it correctly that you said that though you had 64% of your students meet your targets overall, that you were looking at your economically disadvantaged, and it was only at 40.
Yes.
What kinds of things are you looking at to try to make a difference there?
You know, a lot of what we're looking at is different opportunities to differentiate, and differentiate based on the skills that the students may be missing so that they can access the core content at the level that all the students are. So we have some intervention blocks that we have during the day that we have a teacher who's able to help us out with those. We also have our instructional assistants who can provide some small group instruction, and the instructional assistants may not always provide the instruction for the children who we're concerned about. They may actually pull another group so that the teacher can strategically work with the students.
Exciting work, and I'll look forward to hearing the results of that next time you come.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Donna?
Well, first of all, thank you, and thank you for all the data. It was wonderful to see even just the staff and the increase in their support for the school climate, and it was just wonderful to see that. And I love to hear everything that you're doing with dual language. I have a question that I haven't heard an answer to. Have we thought about like integrating the parents who are not part of dual language and how we can better get them to appreciate and foster relationships with the like I've heard a lot about what you did with the teachers and the students and the families that are in the dual language, but I'm thinking about the part that I haven't heard about it, the families that are not in dual language that now have to embrace this new community, which I think is wonderful. I just want to know that we've done something there too.
You know, one of the things that we've done with our families who are not in dual language is actually invite them to the family bilingual literacy program, so that it's not just a program targeting our dual language families, but it's targeting all of our families to unite everybody together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And as the Riverwoods teams moves away from the presentation table, Assistant Superintendent Tim Warenga is going to move forward to the presentation table. It's that time of the year when we provide our annual report to the Board of Education on the results of the ACT from the previous class, so from the class 2015. And as Tim's getting situated in here, I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Tonight I will discuss the ACT scores for the class of 2015 and how we use that data to improve our work with the students of Naperville District 203. Every year, ACT sends us the data in August for the graduating class of the previous spring. This data consists of the reports based upon the most recent ACT taken by each student in the graduating class. Tonight I will look at the ACT data for the class of 2015. I will review the ACT composite score historically and the college readiness benchmark scores. I will also show the data using cohort growth, report on the data from several subgroups, provide interpretations of the meaning of the data and the work to be done. There are several key points to remember as I present the data. First, even with the changes to the ACT test and the changes to our state testing system, over the long term, our scores are trending upward. When we examine our subgroup work data in our work to raise the achievement of our students on the wrong side of the achievement gap, we are seeing improvements over the last couple years. And our college readiness percentage, measuring the 4 ACT content areas, has improved. Our balanced assessment system includes several accountability scores, district assessments that are given regularly over the course of the year to students, and the classroom assessments. This report reflects the work in Blueprint 218C, which is to implement a balanced assessment system to prepare staff and students for success with the next generation of assessments. For the last 3 years, our data has included all students who have taken the ACT. Prior to the class of 2013, students who had extended time granted on the state test were excluded on the publicly reported score. This year, I will emphasize the new way that the scores are reported. The graduating class of 2014 was the last to take the PSAE, which included the ACT, as the first day of testing in late April for our juniors. We advocated for the class of 2016 to be given the ACT universally, and this past year, the state of Illinois paid for juniors to take the ACT this past March 3rd. This benefited all of our students, but especially those students who may not have the resources to pay for a national admissions test. One concern I have is that by scheduling the test in early March of the student's junior year, if a student never retakes the ACT, they will have less time on task or in class to prepare for the test. For this year, the state accountability testing in the high schools is still uncertain. PARCC will be given, but is unclear for which courses. The proposed state budget includes 3 levels of PARCC testing in math and reading, and 1 level of state science testing at the high school, and a college entrance test. Since the state budget has not been approved, we are preparing for any and all of these tests. The state accepted proposals from testing companies this past August, and while the details have not been revealed, with the expiration of the ACT contract this past June, there's an expectation that ACT and SAT will compete for the contract as they did in Michigan this past year. The decision is expected by the end of the calendar year, and the testing should be in March or April. This report is primarily based upon the public data reported in the ACT Class of 2015 grad report. We also receive monthly reports from ACT that includes any scores that the students took, students who took the ACT the previous month. Students self-reported their demographical, personal, and academic data, such as ethnicity and courses taken, to ACT. We match the students in our database using their name and birth date, and then load the data into our warehouse. It is important to know that the data in the ACT report is self-reported and that some information is not contained in the report, such as low income and IEP status. First, looking at some of our student groupings, I will pull data from our warehouse to report on comparing achievement, such as our schools do when they use Scantron analytics in the school improvement process. The image you see on the left is a screen on the left of the screen is a sample of the Scantron analytics filters that we apply when looking at ACT scores. I will start with using the data from the ACT Class of 2015 grad report, which was released a few weeks ago. The Class of 2015 was the second highest scoring in the history of Naperville District 203, with the highest being the Class of 2014. Their ACT composite was 24.9. From a historical point of view, there are several lessons to be learned. The first is that the ACT score is a benchmark representing many years of schooling. The Class of 2015 started in kindergarten in the 2002-2003 school year. The work of the entire District 203 system contributed to their progress over the years. What is also apparent from this graph is that both high schools and their feeder schools have consistently provided an excellent education for our graduates. Many districts with multiple high schools struggle with separation between the schools, where one of the schools consistently outperforms the others. The graphs of our two high schools wind their way around each other in an upward trend, demonstrating the consistency of education received by students at all of our schools. Changes in the ACT and in our state have also had an impact on our district ACT scores, but our average has continued to march higher. In 1985, our district average was 22.2. In 1989, our scores surged. Was this due to improvement in the schools, or did the students in Naperville suddenly become smarter? Actually, it was due to the fact that ACT replaced social studies by ACT reading. Our average ACT score improved to 24.1 with the graduating class of 1995. In the 1990s, we had about 75 to 85% of our students taking the ACT. These were students who could afford the test and were going to college. In 2001, the new Prairie State exam with the ACT was given to almost all juniors, with the exception being the students who took the alternate state exam. Our students continue to improve, and in 2005, our graduating class was higher than just a decade earlier, even though the ACT was now given almost universally. The graduating class ACT report, up until this point, had only reported students with standard time tests, meaning the scores of students who had extended times on the test were left out. While we always counted all scores in our school improvement process, publicly our scores did not reflect all students. With the class of 2013, ACT corrected this, which was more accurate but lowered the publicized scores. But students have continued to improve, with the students in the graduating class of 2015 having a higher ACT than all the students accounted for, with all the students accounted for, than a class a decade earlier of whom ACT only counted the standard time students. Molly Farmer and I presented cohort data to you just this past June that included the Explore, Plan, and Practice ACT. We use these tests to help us prepare our students for the ACT as a college entrance exam. The graduating class of 2015 was the first cohort to start with the Explore back in 2010. Cohort data helps us understand both the achievement and the growth of our students. So while the class of 2014 had the highest achievement on their ACT average, the class of 2015 was able to match their growth from the freshman year plan to the ACT, and the class of 2013, whose achievement was the lowest of the three classes on the ACT average, had the most growth from the plan to the ACT. Students fill out their demographical information when filling out the paperwork for ACT. It is voluntary and self-reported. It is important to note that variability could exist in this data due to the nature of self-reporting. For example, with the class of 2015, 10% of the students opted to not share their ethnicity. From the ACT report, we can look at subgroups and how they compare to the average score. If the average score of this subgroup is significantly below the average score, then is often described by the phrase achievement gap. Our staff has been involved in discussion and action around how to reduce these achievement gaps. For instance, a gap of 6.5 scale points between the average of our black students and the overall average in 2013 has been reduced to 5.8 scale points in 2015. In the last 2 years, the subgroup has increased their scores. The gap of 3.7 scale points between the average of our Hispanic students and our overall average in 2013 has reduced to 3.4 scale points. While these are small successes, they are certainly not enough. The work takes time and resources, of which we are dedicated to provide in this endeavor. ACT defines the core as students who take 4 years of English, 3 or more years of math, 3 or more years of social studies, and 3 or more years of natural science. This chart outlines the number of students in each ethnic group, the percentage taking the core or more, the average ACT for those who take the core or more, and those who do not. For those students in every subgroup, a key strategy is to have the students take the core or more. As Dan Bridges has defined for us in our levels of leadership, this is part of the academic press to improve the learning for our students. Several of the blueprint action items, such as summer school, curriculum development, ELO, and the multi-level system of support, will help to improve the achievement and growth of those on the wrong side of the achievement gap. The ACT grad report does not report on low income status or IEP status of our students. These are two subgroups that our improvement teams research. Since the data is not in the grad report, I mined the data from our data analytics tool, Scantron Analytics. This is the tool that all of our teachers and administrators have access to, but it is used primarily by the school improvement teams and student service teams. The averages are different because this data set includes every score for the students in the class of 2015, not just their most recent score. The filters used are from the Data in Infinite Campus, our student information system. It is clear from the graph that in both cases the achievement gap is narrowing. Our gap for low-income students has decreased from 5.46 scale points to 3.63 scale points over the last 2 years. Over the same time period, our gap for students with IEPs has reduced from 6.28 scale points to 6.13 scale points. It is again our goal to accelerate this process. ACT sets benchmark cut scores for each subject area in order to create a common focus for our schools across the nation, establish high expectations for our students and schools, to promote a rigorous curriculum, to inform college counseling, and to measure and evaluate the progress of students in schools. The benchmark score that, according to ACT research, reflects a 50% chance that a student will score a B or greater, or 75% of a student scoring a C or greater in a college entrance class in the respective content area. ACT reports these scores as benchmarks for being ready for college and careers. What they really tell us is the probability of success in the freshman course in these disciplines. Almost all students take college English as a freshman. Not as many freshmen take college biology. So students have more choices when they meet each of these benchmarks. To be ready for college and careers involves more than test scores. Our staff, curriculum, activities, and athletics provide opportunities and promote behaviors that will help students be successful beyond the test scores. But our students demonstrate an academic readiness to attend college or begin a career by scoring on these 4 different areas. The highlight is that the higher percentage of all students that met all 4 benchmarks than it was in the previous 2 years. This is over twice the state percentage. While these scores are very good compared to the state average, we are continuing to strive to improve these scores so our students have more opportunities available to them. Under the direction of Mr. Bridges, our entire system has dedicated time and energy to the closing of achievement gaps. Specific next steps include pressing for more students in the core, actionable items on closing achievement gaps in school improvement plans, improving data access, promoting culturally responsive practices, and providing a balanced assessment system. What I want to be sure to leave you with here today are the following points of pride shared in this presentation. The ACT score is a benchmark representing many years of schooling. The work of the entire Naperville 203 system contributed to their progress over the years. We are all in this together. Our data indicates that both high schools and their feeder schools have consistently provided an excellent education for our graduates. The graphs of our two high schools wind their way around each other on an upward trend, demonstrating the consistency of the education received by students at all of our schools. As the previous slides have shown, we are making progress on closing the achievement gaps among Black, Hispanic, low-income, and IEP students. We have multiple opportunities to mine data from outside sources and from our own systems. As college readiness data, benchmark data indicates, we as a district continue to move higher in setting up our students for academic success in the post-secondary arena. It is a celebration that the percentage of our students who meet all 4 benchmarks is on the rise. I will now take your questions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Any questions? Kristen? Did you?
Well, it's really encouraging to see the narrowing of some of those gaps.
Absolutely.
And I think it's also very reassuring to look at the growth and look at that growth trajectory for all those different years to see how our growth continues to stay on that same upward trajectory, for lack of a, since you've already said that word. Sure. I'm wondering if you can tell us what you expect going forward. You know, sure. It seemed as if it is very cohort-based, where you have the groups and they're starting and then they've got the growth and their growth is outpacing, but their growth is staying similar, and excitingly we're seeing the academic achievement gaps closing. But what do you expect going forward in terms of the similar trajectories for the years going forward?
And it's always difficult to project because each group of students is individual and different. But the class of 2016, which is presently with us, their trajectory shows us that their growth actually from the Explore to the Practice ACT outpaced this previous cohort, as well as their Practice ACT score was higher than the previous one. So we're hopeful on that, and we'll continue, though, in working with those students, not only to provide them the experiences that will help them on their college entrance exam, but help the other cohorts as they're coming up through the system as well.
Thank you.
Actually, Donna had her hand up before.
So comprehensive, thank you. And as I dove into it deeper, I got into my geeky statistics person, and I noticed that you mined data for the low income and the IEP students to look at closing gaps. But what I really loved was what you provided, and I know that this was provided by them, but well, I think some of it was mine. You provided ethnicity levels of preparation, like based on the courses that they were taking. Is that something that's something that we put together, that you mined and put together?
No, that was actually in the ACT grad report, so we were able to take that out.
Oh, because they asked how many courses they take.
Correct.
Okay.
But we do, to give you kind of a similar but different, for instance, we had one of our high school principals just today asked me, they're working on a report to work with students that they want to work on the wrong side of the achievement gap, and they're gathering information data such as things like attendance and other pieces that we can mine out of our system. It takes a little bit of time to do that, but it is information that we have there that we can provide so that they can take a look. And what's nice about our systems is they can actually start mining some of that themselves.
So when we looked at the ethnicity levels of preparation, that's not something we did for low-income or IEP students? Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Someday, I'm not asking, I don't want to charge you with any, because I know that's a lot of work, but I would love to see that, like, as if it ever becomes available, not for me, I'd love to see it, because I think that that's something that we have a whole lot of control over it with our career counseling, with our counselors, and the trying to encourage students to take more of those core classes so that we can close those gaps even faster.
It was interesting when this report came out. That is not a slide that I typically have reported on before, but the words of Dr. Hester were echoing in my ears. She's always talking about the core or more, And when that's been in our report, and to be able to kind of show how impactful that is, I think is something that our schools can focus on too.
And that's what I globbed onto in your report. I saw that and I thought, oh my goodness, like that's something that we really can have huge impact and cut those gaps even faster. So thank you.
Susan?
So Tim, if Core and More makes such a difference, how are we intentionally, as I hear Dr. Hester say those words all the time, how are we guiding people more to those? And especially, gosh, when you look, as you have it broken down by race and ethnicity, it's so interesting. I mean, and I think one of my takeaways from this is that I know you often go back, all of the cabinet goes back to the last year's presentation that you gave us, and if it was a successful presentation, you mirror that quite closely. And I think it's really helpful if you pull in new data so that it gives us kind of new points of discussion as well. You know, I think we don't know, we're not always asking for that because we don't know what's there. So how do you counsel more people into Core or More?
I'll provide a couple, and then I'll turn to my colleagues behind me. But historically, we've targeted in some of the areas, like in mathematics, to get students to Algebra 2. And so, for instance, this year there's an effort to get the students into Algebra 1 as freshmen. And so you've heard of that effort. There's also I think the core work that's being done in our sciences, that the curriculum work that Jane's leading with her team, that provides us with, starting with the chemistry, the different sciences that will provide that kind of preparation for our students. So I don't know if there's anything that my colleagues want to add.
I just think I would add the work with Rising Star. So if you would go in and look at our school improvement process and look at the indicators, it actually calls upon us to go in, not only identify the groups of students, but then, provide the programs of instruction or the intentional actions. So Tim mentioned what we're doing with algebra, or I should say what our high schools is, they really have peeled back the layers of data there, and then they have in a very targeted way worked with the teachers on differentiated instruction. Not only that, we even looked at the kids who are accessing Algebra 1. And then looking at, if we understand that those students who are in Algebra 1 will be more successful, then we need to make sure that all students can take Algebra 1 at their freshman year.
So do you feel like you found one of the keys to success that you can now, program in more often?
I think it's more of just not just making these conversations anymore. So we're conscientious of what we need to do. I think one of the keys is now actively identifying potential and making the pathway available for kids to get into the Core and More.
And do you feel like maybe sometimes, you're like, well, we want this kid to be successful, so we're not going to put them in one of these classes. But do you feel the opposite now?
I would say we definitely feel the opposite.
We're trying to change the conversation, too. If that's what's been a gatekeeping mechanism to keep a child out of a more rigorous course, the question now should be, well, what supports need to be provided in that course to ensure that there can be success? You've heard the phrase mentioned throughout Tim's presentation of academic press, and that's a phrase we coined from Dr. Murphy at Vanderbilt, which you'll appreciate. And it really focuses on ambitious goals for every individual student, access to the most rigorous curriculum we have available, and access for all students to quality instruction. So those have been the more intentional and deliberate conversations we've had. I think we have a high school improvement plan scheduled in a couple of months, and I think we'll target this conversation as part of their presentation. Perhaps.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Great report.
It's a great report, Tim. Thanks for all the hard work, and certainly shows that we're on the right course, at least the last 3 years anyway.
And we're going to stay with the assessment team, but bring forward the Director of Research and Analytics, Molly Farmer, who is going to provide an update to the Board of Education on the graduate survey. So as Molly takes a seat, we'll turn it over to Molly.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges, for the introduction. Tonight's presentation is about the surveys we ask of the students who have graduated from Naperville District 203. The outcomes of this presentation are to show how the results of these surveys fit with the Focus 2020 strategic blueprint commitment and to review the indicators of success for this project. In order to accomplish that, we will review data from 3 different graduating classes. The results in this presentation are organized by topic instead of by graduating class. The Focus 2020 Strategic Blueprint Commitment 220A is to evaluate students' post-secondary achievement of the District 203 mission. The graduate survey actually includes 3 different surveys. The focus for tonight is the senior exit survey for the class of 2015, the 18-month graduate survey for the class of 2013, and the 5-year graduate survey for the class of 2010. The indicators of success for this long-term project is to have a graduating class have a 20% response rate 5 years after they have graduated. We want to make sure the community knows about the survey and has access to the results. We want the students who are a product of 203 to show that they were given adequate preparation in their academic careers to show lifelong success with the mission statement. In order to stress the importance of the mission, the high schools will use this data in their continuous school improvement process. The class of 2010 is the first group of graduates who've responded to all 3 of the surveys. We are pleased with the 24% response rate. Not only are we presenting the information this evening, but we are publishing it on our district website under academics in the assessment section. Our graduates consistently report positively on how the preparation they have received in our school system and how they are demonstrating the mission in their post-secondary experiences. The high schools have been involved in the process from the creation of the surveys to reviewing the results to inform their programs. The mission is the basis of our work in District 203. On the right, the graduating seniors from 2015 were asked, how important is each strand of the mission to you? On the left, the class of 2010 was asked, how well did you develop the following attributes of the mission? Graduates rated from 4 as the highest choice to 1 as the lowest choice. The 5 strands of the mission statement are listed from the highest average to the lowest average. All the strands average to at least a 3, which correlates to good or important. Our mission endures through the years in the eyes of our graduates. There are several questions that relate to the different curricular areas and the experience students had during high school. Shown is the class of 2015 rating the areas from excellent 4 to poor 1. Most of the areas were above a descriptor of 3, which translates to good. Special education was top for the class of 2015 and 2013 on their senior exit survey. It is a celebration that our students in need are feeling supported. The largest increase was school counseling/student services. Class of 2013 and 2010 had the results ranked as 12th on the list, while here it is 10th. And there was also an increase in their average of 1900ths from the class of 2010. Some curriculum departments will have to review their data. For example, the World and Classical Languages Department should review the information from the graduate surveys to improve how students would rate their experience in foreign language classes. The follow-up question to the class of 2013 on the 18-month graduate survey is asked differently because a graduate's frame of reference has changed with the time progressing. Both questions asked about the various curriculum areas. The largest increase seen from the class of 2010 18-month survey is special education grew on average 3100ths, an increase from being 13th out of 15th on the list of results. We are also pleased that even though the class of 2013 rated their experience in foreign language classes low on their senior exit survey, similar to the class of 2015 on the previous slide, they are rating their preparation in foreign language class higher 18 months later. We also noticed the increase with the class of 2010 from their senior exit survey to their 18-month survey. The follow-up question to the class of 2010 on the 5-year graduate survey is phrased slightly different to account for even more time passing. Instead of rating each area on a 4-point scale, the students were allowed to check the area if it was applicable. For example, 55% of the students found English Communication Arts a part of their high school education that they use now. When looking at the curriculum areas, ELA, math, and science were also the top 3 here and on the class of 2013 18-month survey. Instead of looking at the curricular areas, this question pertains to different skills. Students could rate their preparation on a scale of Great 4 to Poor 1. The results here are similar to the class of 2010 18-month survey. Critical thinking and problem solving are closely tied to the mission strand of complex thinker. This shows that students feel good on average with that skill. Transitioning from academics, there are 6 questions that ask about the climate of the building on their senior exit survey. The first question, about feeling safe in the building, had the majority of the students select strongly agree. For the other questions, they had an overall shape as the students feeling respected by each other, where the majority of the students chose agree. The results were all positive, especially when combining the categories of strongly agree and agree. The question on the right had the greatest increase from the class of 2013 senior exit survey when looking at those percents. The rest of the presentation looks at what the graduates are planning after high school. For interest in the following career cluster, STEM has risen to the top for the class of 2013 and the class of 2015 when compared to the class of 2010 on their senior exit survey. Immediately following high school, around 80% of our students plan and then attend a 4-year college. The results were similar for the 2 groups shown, as well as the class of 2013 18-month survey. These questions show the progression of almost all of our students being full-time students 2 years out to more than half of our students working full-time when they are 5 years out. For the class of 2013, a full-time student means that 84% are at a 4-year college, 13% are at a 2-year college, and less than 1% are at a vocational technical college. This question expands on the previous slide for the working categories. 49% when you combine the purple and red bars of graduates are doing work related to their degree, licensure, or certification. This slide is a true picture of success for the district. 89% of our graduates have earned a bachelor's degree. The mission statement has made our post-secondary student experience one that leads to a passion for lifelong learning if this trend of success continues. I will now take your questions.
Thank you. Mike?
Plenty of interesting stuff. I know the last couple of years we also got similar stuff, and I appreciate your comments on the buildings taking some of that information to heart. The one thing I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because I don't want us to overstate our success rates. When you say 89% have received a bachelor or better, that's 89% of the respondents, right, of 24%. Is that correct?
Correct, but we, even though when you're looking at the senior exit and the 18-month and then the 5-year, even though we're getting less of a response rate, we're seeing very similar distributions on a lot of the other questions. So we're hoping that even though it's a smaller population, that it's still representative of our students.
Okay, thanks.
So is this survey coming out from you or from school perceptions?
School Perceptions is a group that we work with. We create the survey ourselves. We come up with the questions and what we want, and they actually help us track the students after they graduate.
Okay, so I just received the 18-month follow-up survey for a 2014 graduate, and I deleted it thinking it was, I thought it was junk. It says, Naperville Central is asking for 3 minutes of your graduate's time this summer. I'm like, delete. Right? It didn't come from the school. It didn't, I just truly didn't feel like it was anything. And then I was just thinking, oh, there's a survey, right? And I like go back and look at my mail. I'm like, it says please forward to your student. Like, I would never have even considered that. And I don't know if that's a problem that you're running into, or you're looking for more, because a lot of, just like your cell phone number, the kids are getting more longer term emails. Even when they're in high school, they have they have those rather than just in addition, right? Kevin, you have one that's like your personal email address that you hope to use for the next couple decades or something when your school one goes away.
Yeah, we actually years ago kind of asked not only graduates but parents about what they would prefer, and part of it was they didn't want it to be seen as the school requiring it to happen. I think we live in a different age, though, so I'm going to write that down and talk to. We're more interactive. We're more social media based now. I think it's time maybe we revisit that, and we could intentionally send it out from the schools, whereas before we were intentionally not because of that. So it's a good point.
And I don't know if you get their email, but I'm happy. I'll forward mine to you so you can see it and why I thought it was junk.
Sure.
So, just so you know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jackie?
Gina, I don't expect you to know the answer to this, but maybe somebody in the audience says, when's the first year they do reunions in high school?
I think it's typically the fifth
year.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, I'm not going to tell you what reunion I'm going to this year, but I'm just wondering if, they're well attended, so wonder if that's another way. I totally agree with Tim, you and Susan's comment that the world has changed. So you see something from the school, you're like, oh, well, I'll respond to that. That's not just some third-party junk. But I just wondered if that's another way that you might be able to get this response rate up from 20 or 24, because I've asked my kids about it, and they too have said, and they were very involved in high school, very involved and loved their high schools, but they've said it must have gotten in junk, or they thought it was junk or whatever. And I thought, really? So.
Good feedback.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your report. In one of your background data, you talk a little bit. It has some of the questions from the senior exit report, for example, for 2015, and there was a category talking about things that influenced my education or something, and it talked a little bit about homework and how classes were taught and a variety of different. It had something about boyfriends. I mean, it had a whole bunch of different areas where students were asked to rate different categories. Do we track those same categories over time, and do we see any trends of that? Are there things that we do to address the factors that they say influence their education?
I believe the question you're referring to, what interferes with their learning?
What interferes with their learning? Right.
That question is one I believe we only ask on our senior exit survey, and we haven't looked at the trend from different graduating classes for those specific questions. But it's something we can look at.
Just interested to hear if, how classes are taught or different things on homework was something that we've seen over time, that a variety of different students are saying that interfered, or if it would be something that just is an anomaly based on individual class responses.
Well, for that specific one, we do know that they are commenting on the classes, and that tells us that instruction really is critical, and that that teacher-to-student relationship is really important, and when it's not there, that is a large factor in interfering with the students' learning. Okay. But I just want to caution, I don't feel like they're saying that overall they feel like their classes are not being taught well. It's just saying that when it doesn't occur to have that relationship, that's what is causing them issues in their learning.
Yeah, and there's a variety of different, like I said, there was something about, homework, and there's a whole variety of different factors. It was something that I was surprised to see that students would say, and that's why I'm asking if that's something we've seen or if it's just a anomaly.
I know the one that you specifically referred to about instruction was something that I saw in a couple of the surveys, but I didn't go deeper into the other reasons.
Okay.
Donna?
So I had one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and it's more of a comment than a question, so you're kind of off the hook a little bit. But on on page 14, when you have the post-high school and what students are doing after high school. And at first glance at it, it looked like, oh, we went from 84% going to a four-year college to only 77% going to four-year college. And as I looked at that closer, I realized we have a larger percentage going to a two-year college and then going to a four-year college. And I just thought that's really interesting because it's not really a reflection on us. It's more a reflection on the cost of post-secondary education and how much that has affected students' choices, I think. So I think we almost have to add all those together to look at our success. But I love that it was broken down. I just thought it was interesting as we look at the statistics. It's not always just a reflection of what we're doing. There's so many other factors. So thank you for all the detail.
And I would, if I may, also add, we did not include the 2013 senior graduating data, and it was interesting to me that for the class of 2013, when they were first exiting, they said 80% were planning to go to a four-year college. And then when we asked them in their 18-month survey, what did you actually do? 84% said they were at a four-year college. So it was interesting. It's not what you would expect, that it would increase going, from what I planned to what I'm actually doing. But that was something that I noticed as well when I was looking across this slide.
Any question? Okay, well, thanks for the report. Ed,
Thanks, Molly.
Are you satisfied with the data you're getting back? And does it at least tell you we're headed in the right direction?
I'm absolutely satisfied. We didn't focus on a lot of the questions at the end where we're just plain out asking, are you overall satisfied with your high school experience? And we are consistently getting, around 91%, I believe was this last one, saying, yes, we are overall satisfied with our experience. So I think that's very positive.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. Inside the President's report is a summary of the board self-review that's there for the public viewing. Board of Education reports. All right. We'll move on to the adoption of the personnel report. Can I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented? I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Aye.
Longkey? Yes. Yench?
Aye.
Prati?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Fielding?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, on to discussion with action. And
Okay.
Yep.
Annually,
Health
our
insurance.
Health Insurance and Benefits Committee meets to make recommendations to the Board of Education for any potential changes to insurance and benefits. And so Chief Financial Officer, School Business Official Brad Kaufman will provide you an overview of recommendations that have been made. Again, this is discussion without action this evening.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Bridges. As he said, can you hear me okay? I'm sorry. How's that? Oh, okay, there we go. All right. So we have here loaded in the board information is the summary of all the information presented and discussed with the Insurance Committee. I would just like to briefly walk over the detailed financial report. The 2015 report is in there. Obviously, that is about half a year estimated and half a year actual. We are projecting, as you can see on page 2, line 25, we are projecting that we could possibly end the year with a small deficit. But, like I say, we are only projecting half of the year. Then we take and we spring forward, and we have to then make an estimate for all of 16. It's very easy to project the revenue side. It's very difficult to project the expenditure side. But using the national trend of 9% of medical inflation, which we historically have done better than that. But even with that, then flash forward, you can see that if we kept our premiums flat, this is on page 2 again, line 40, we would be estimating approximately a $2.3 million deficit. So we looked at several different funding models, the committee has come to a consensus on page 3 of recommending a 4.5% increase for our medical and RX only, dental and vision remaining flat. That would generate about 31.7 million of revenue. If you go to page 4, you can see that that would then estimated on our gross cost of 32.8 at the 9% inflation. We would have about $1 million deficit there on line 26, page 4. That's a conservative. We've trended better than that in times past. We would not expect to actually reach that kind of a deficit, but it would be possible. If you, piece of good news, going to page 5, I would like to look at some national data with you real quickly. This is the Towers Watson Health Insurance Survey. And you can see that in 2010, our average premium as compared to the average, average cost, we were running about 26% higher than the nation. And in 2015, that has now dropped to only 16%. So we are becoming more efficient, if you will, compared to the national average. And you can see that the 6-year average change 4.8 on Tower Watson, while we were at 3.2, which is 1.6 below, so how we're closing the gap. Finally, the last page, page 6, we've had several discussions before at the board table worrying or asking the question about the Cadillac tax, which is part of the Affordable Care Act. For any plans that they deem as having a higher than normal premium. So we ran a scenario through 2020 to benchmark our plans to see where we may be. Assuming that we maintained a 5% increase over the next years to 2020, you can see the only plan would be our Platinum PPO plan. That would become edging closer to that, but that's if you'll notice that Cadillac tax limit is not projected at this time to increase. We don't know if Congress will actually hold to that or if they will actually increase that for some kind of inflationary factor. So with all that data presented, we would want to just reemphasize that we're recommending a 4.5% increase in our premiums for medical and RX, and vision and dental is flat. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions from the board? Jackie? Mike?
A couple. First one is the 9%. You know, even what you showed us up on the, didn't show up there, but on the graph, across the country, it was under 5%. I looked at the medical CPI over the last 10 years. I can't find anything over 4%. You look at the personal consumption expenditures, which is probably more accurate. That averages about 1.1% over the last 10 years higher, but you're still talking only about maybe, the peak's 5%. We haven't seen anything close to 9% in even the PCE, which I don't believe you're using, since 15 years ago. So we see what the average costs are that businesses are paying. We know that the CPI is nowhere close to that. Where is that 9% coming from?
I can do some additional research, but our outside firm that helps us set the premiums, when they or calculate the number forward, that's the number they said that was from the national. So I will ask them to verify why, where they're, or why that number.
It seems very high, like double what it should be. Which brings us to, is a 4.5% realistic? Which goes into a couple things. I'm glad you brought up the Cadillac tax, or the excise tax, as it should probably be called. When you talk about that, first of all, in your in the graphs they provided, did they include the, I saw where they put in the health savings account on our high deductible plan.
Right.
Did they include the flex contributions that employees make, and also the spousal surcharge in their calculations as far as what the cost would be that counts towards that?
Right. It's my understanding that, HSA is included, okay, because that is employer provided. So that is included in the high deductible health plan. Flex spending, elections, and the spousal surcharge are not included in the calculations because they're not considered base premiums. They're elections. So, well, elections for flex, but as far as the spousal surcharge, an employee could elect not to have that if they chose to have their spouse go to their employer plan. So they're not reflected in these.
Okay, you might want to check on that. I'm 99% sure the flex spending is definitely included, and I'd personally be surprised if spousal surcharge was not included. But I mean,
Flex or HSA? Because HSA is included.
yeah, I know.
Okay,
I said that.
Flex.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll double check on that.
And by the way, the law states it will be indexed for some kind of inflation going forward after 2018, but the Congress has not passed the exact numbers yet. As a matter of fact, those numbers may change to 10,227.5. They may even change going forward because they have not been put into the law yet. Those are the tentative numbers that are being put out by the administration as what they expect it to be. So that could also change. I'm not too worried about where we push on that. I think we're in pretty good shape, as you pointed out. Let me see what was my other question here. The other one's kind of tactic going down the road, so I'm not going to bother with that. But yeah, the biggest one is I think that inflation rate's way too high. So it once again gets back to the discussion we had before you were here. We had this in depth. But obviously, the higher we keep our rates, the more we're taking out of the education fund, and it sits in the health insurance fund. And as you've said in past meetings, our balance is too high right now, or higher than you would feel comfortable with. It's not that you're uncomfortable with it, but you would be comfortable with a much lower thing. Remember, every dollar we take out, and we're paying 85% of the cost, comes out of our education fund and out of our property taxes. So, we want to be prudent going forward, but we don't need to necessarily overestimate inflation or increase premiums more than is prudent going forward. So those are my big comments.
Brad, remind me who, or I guess remind our community, who's on the insurance committee, please?
The insurance committee is made up of a representation of management, which has 4 positions, and then each one of the unions have 2 positions. So,
Kristen?
I have rate questions also, and I remember I was questioning about the 9. First, my question was, what was the projected increase last year? Was it 4.8 right here, what it says it was, or was it higher, just out of curiosity?
well, last year we did not increase premiums at all.
But you're looking at what you're basing the premium increase based on what you expect costs to be, correct?
Correct.
So what I was asking is, what was the projection for last year? If we went up 3.2, is that, you said we went up about 3.2 last year in terms of our costs? Is that correct? Am I implementing?
No.
Okay.
Well, that is, where you're pulling the 3.2 is our would be 6
Cost
years
comparison.
of data coming off of the summary off of the Tower Watson summary. We did not increase premiums last year based on reductions that we made. And we are running pretty close to flat. I mean, so we should expect, if you look on page 1.
Brad, you may not have the information. I think the question she's asking is, what did we project or expect the cost to increase? Not what we were going to charge in terms of premium, but what did we expect cost of insurance to increase last year?
0, flat.
Okay, so, and we expected that because of plan changes.
Plan design and premium supplement through the spousal surcharge.
So we held our costs flat by making plan design changes. But what was the overall projection for cost increase, just in terms of looking at that number, in terms of how to evaluate it based on what the nation does and what we do? Obviously, our costs are implemented by our plan design, but we're also somewhat of a reflection of the nation. I'm just wondering, were the national costs expected to rise that much last year, or is that something that is projected because of legislative changes like ACA? I know we had a discussion about this in
Right.
the, I think it was in the Citizen Finance Committee.
It was Citizens Finance. And
And
if you remember,
we
one of our
talked
members
about
felt
what-
like we were projecting too low.
Right, but what did they say? Is that where the 9 came from? Because I remember there was a dialogue about what we
No, that's not where the
expected
9 came from, but I'd have to go back and review
Because
the
I
notes.
think we had a number in our 5-year plan of health
We did,
insurance
and
projections
in
based on
feedback from our Citizens Finance Committee, the health expert that was on that committee suggested it was too high, and so we made a change that was approved as an assumption. But we can go back and get that and have that for you. And I see your point. That can be something that our
Guides
team
us
can
in
look
terms
at
of-
as a comparison. Okay, if we thought it was going to be this, and it was only this, is that a
Uh-huh.
trend that's worthwhile in thinking about this? So
So
we'll do
then
that.
my second question is with regard to in your outlook here, you say you expect the cost to rise 9. You don't expect our cost to rise that much, just given our past history. We are not making, I think I'm adding this part, we're not making plan design changes to mitigate, so we would be looking at just simply what our costs are going to be. I'm just wondering if we would run higher costs than what we were expecting with our premium. So you're saying you think they could be 9. You don't expect them to be that, but it's 4.5. If we did run those high costs and we did run a deficit, are we able to just simply turn around the following year and then pass those costs on? And would that be your expectation?
Well, let's just say that, if our costs hit as high as what the projections are.
National average or
Right.
national projection?
I would say our expectations would be is we would be looking to, because we could not sustain, right, sorry. We could not, continue at that growth rate. You can see with the projections of just being 5% year after year, how that compounds.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, if we actually did hit those kind of increases, we'd be looking at making some kind of changes to the plan to bring that, to curtail that.
Mike?
But I know this isn't exactly what Kristen asked, but, the first part of that report points out if we have 9% increase in cost and 0 increase in premium, we have approximately a $2.3 million shortfall on balance, which is about $15 million, and we, according to Brad, we only need about 7 or 8 million. So there's certainly no one-year problem, even at a 9% with a no premium increase, correct?
Correct. I mean,
Talking about the surplus, right? Because we've got a $16 million, as of last month, $16.5 million.
Correct.
So we could not raise funds and we'd still have enough surplus.
That is correct.
I think that's the point we're trying to make, is because once again, the community, we all know, but the community understand, we're taking this money out of property taxes, out of the education fund. And this would be $2 million that we would have for education purposes instead of sitting in a health insurance fund.
That already
So-
has a surplus.
That already has a large surplus. Just pointing that out. And I'm glad you
At the
guys
same
echoed
time,
that.
we want to be prepared for the cost to rise.
We wanna be
Well, and so
prudent.
it's helpful for us to know we want to know what kinds of things are coming into the 9%, and maybe the historical trends will help us to be able to determine, I certainly have seen a lot of health insurance premium increase in my own personal, but I don't know what's happening nationwide in terms of where we are with implementation of things that will cause different factors. I don't know. So
Right.
I know we had some discussions about it at the Citizens Finance, and I know there were some health experts who gave some thoughts about that.
Because, where this really becomes a factor is further down the road, where the premiums are used to determine the excise tax and whether we have to pay it or not. But deductibles are not counted to that cost. So we have very relatively low deductibles. And as those go up, not only do they change behaviors, but they also cut down on the costs that get calculated into the excise tax. So that's one other thing that we need to look long term, because keeping our premiums down, but maybe the trade-off is slightly higher deductibles and coinsurance. That actually makes that's the intent of the Affordable Care Act. It actually shares the cost better, because one of the reasons they have the excise tax is because they realize that it's a tax-free benefit. It's sheltered income for the employees. So, it's a pretty in-depth problem with a lot of different tentacles that, we need to be thoughtful.
Is there information about the coinsurance and deductibles in this report? I wasn't looking at it for that perspective. Did you provide that or no? I know you have the premiums.
I'm sorry. Since we had recommended no change, I can certainly provide a plan summary in the next report.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Okay. Next is 8.02, two policies out of Section 4 we'll continue to discuss. We've not made any changes in language to either 440 or 4100 just yet. There is a conversation that needs to be had by the board that will guide any edits or any updates to those policies. Anything you want to add?
No, just I did miss right there when I wrote in the memo. Revisions include August 17th board feedback. I just meant to say, refer to Mr. Kaufman's memo that accompanies 4.40. Since it's a discussion item, the idea being there are now, rather than us rewrite the language and talk about the language, present which language the board wishes to determine should be the language to go in 4.40. Then we'll put that in and bring it back for action at the next meeting.
So for 440, the conversation at our last Board of Education meeting centered around a definition of cash and cash equivalents. Administration was asked to provide additional feedback from other of our partners on their definition, so we've provided three. It was a sense that we had at our last meeting that the initial definition provided by Ellers was not in line with really board position or board thinking. So two additional have been provided for you and for conversation. So our recommendation is, or we have a conversation about if any of these three represent the position of the board in its definition of cash and cash equivalents. So, Brad, anything to add?
Not really. That's great. Just reminding that this definition is not the definition used like within cash flow analysis or whatever. This definition applies to our rating as we're AAA rated, and if we ever needed to issue debt or anything like that. So wanting to have that appropriateness.
Questions from the board? Donna?
I don't know that I understood that. So,
okay, so when you're looking at, for example, if we were looking at the definition of, well, I don't know, I shouldn't say cash equivalents, it wouldn't be used in cash flow. This is not a cash flow calculation. This is the policy related to us maintaining our AAA rating.
it's a board policy, right?
Right, board
Right.
policy. And it's looking at what should be the equivalent liquid cash available that a rating agency might look at and say, okay, well, in order to maintain a AAA rating, how would they want that to look? So.
Okay. I guess I echo thank you so much for asking PMA. I think we've worked with them a long time. I don't know anywhere in all of my years that I have ever heard of cash or cash equivalents being 12 to 24 months. So I'm grateful to have the other one. I agree with GASB and PMA, 90 days or less.
So the spirit of understanding the 10%, Brad, is that the total cost, if revenues are delayed by a month, we want to have some surplus there to be able to cover that. And so I'm going to actually take my question back before this, because in order to understand the definition, as I was processing through, I started to think more about the spirit of the policy and what was intended by the policy. So do we have any history on, and I don't expect you to answer this now, but, and I don't want to create a wild goose chase either. I don't know how easy this is to answer, but do we have any history on, like how often has, because I know that revenues are delayed from the state and things like that. So how often are we in that circumstance, of it being delayed by a month? And, is it often more than that? Is the 10% more than adequate, less than? I mean, I'm not trying to change the policy. I just want to understand the spirit of the policy and how often we use it before I make a judgment on the definition.
Right. Okay. Well, as far as revenue timeliness, the state of Illinois has been by far our biggest wild card. In fact, I mean, we were almost 18 months in arrears at one time with the state. The good news there is the state represents 6 to 9% of our total revenue, so it is a small portion. The largest portion of our revenue is our tax revenue, and actually this calculation actually takes out the first early payments on the taxes. So, to say if there's any variability, there is a little variability in our May and June taxes, but this calculation isolates that completely. So I'd have to answer that really there's very minor revenue variation based on how this is calculated, with the fact that it's actually taking out those tax receipts in that calculation.
Mike.
And I certainly understand that. But you could also go to May, and you see that already this past year, and this is before we pay off any of our bonds, which take $10 million in cash. We butted right up to the 10% there. Before we got $100 million in cash receipts, we only got $2.5 million in May, and still with that, we were about at $27 million in actual cash, which actually I believe included the health insurance fund, which would have been another $12 million. So we were probably closer to $15 million in liquid cash. As our policy still states, it says cash balance. So I understand there's $100 million that comes in typically in June, but just a month prior, we don't have that $100 million, and we're already getting dangerously low. So I don't want to focus, I know the way the policy is written, I don't want to focus too much on June and the fact we get $100 million. The idea is we want to keep a prudent and safe cash balance. Not 24-year treasuries, not 12-year bonds, cash balance. That's what our policy currently says. We talked about adding cash equivalents. For people who know, it's a Government Accounting Standards Board. I think that's a good guideline. That's we talked about this in June. We talked about it in July. Went around the room in July. All the board members said cash is cash, pretty much. And I'm trying to figure out why we're still talking about this. But I'm glad PMA also agrees. And I'd like us to move on and, clean this thing up, because this is our first reading, I think.
Yeah. So if we can get a sense from other board members. We have heard from two. This would help us.
Well, it seems like the similarities between PMA and GASB is presenting insignificant risk of changes in value because of changes in interest rates. And I think that would be my concern with the middle definition, is the question mark about the risk of changes in value.
Okay.
And I would agree with Mike on the cash is cash when we're looking to have that money fluid. That was the intent when we put that money aside, to have it available. So.
Okay.
An additional thought, I know we're not the only school that copes with these kinds of questions as we set our policies. Do you have data about other schools or other school districts or other municipalities and how they've managed to work this out in terms of their own cash reserves? Do we have benchmark data in terms of what our nearby counterparts are doing?
We can check.
Good. No, just going to ask if you wanted to speak. Okay. The problem I don't like about the Eller's definition is just the long term, the 24 months maturity, trying to include that as far as cash goes. That seems to be a little, coupling that with the policy, and I get the flow of tax money and so forth. But it says at any month during the year, or any time during the year. So whenever the tax, if the taxes were delayed for whatever reason, we may have a gap. We may not have a gap, but I think you've got to get it to a place where it's liquid cash, and the 24 months is too long of a duration. I mean, the 6 months I could live with if we had a 6 month like a CD or whatever, and we're waiting for it to roll or mature. That might be a little bit more reasonable, but 24 months is too long.
Okay, Don.
I would support what my colleagues are saying. When I asked you the question that I did, I was trying to also understand. I think the reason that we are where we're at with the discussion that we've had is that, at least the way I've interpreted it, is Brad has worked really hard and diligently to try to earn more interest income for our district, and I think that we're trying to balance the two, but we have to stay within policy. So I would say cash is cash, but I do appreciate that you're looking at all these things and trying to make the most of our money. I just think the policy is the policy, and we need to stay within it. But I think your heart and your intention is in the right place, and I understand why we've had so many discussions is because you're trying to balance both of those, and so I appreciate that.
Okay, I think we have clear direction. We'll work up some language in 440 that captures the spirit of the board so that you have an opportunity to see it and make sure that we've got your language. We will bring it back without action at the next meeting with hope for action at the one following. Okay? And then also we were asked to clarify or to seek information on policy 4100. Ken, I'll ask you to speak to that. And then again, we'll incorporate into policy.
Okay, for 4100, just to go back and remember, the revised sections, particularly the second paragraph about catastrophic insurance, was in there to align with state statute. The questions were about providing catastrophic insurance for grades lower than those listed in this section and with statute. And I believe you have a memo from Mr. Kaufman about that and what that coverage is in the district. Specifically that we do have catastrophic coverage is for all grades, all of our students. So the question that remains is, the statute, which this is aligned with, only requires 9 through 12. Our policy goes further than that, and we have, the typical shall language to align with statute, and we're just seeking guidance on, do we want to change the language in here to say we shall provide it for all grades, which is not required by statute. All that does is that provides us less flexibility in the future related to that. We could instead add language that says we may also provide it for the other grades, and that provides flexibility. Those are some options available related to that.
Mike?
I'm sorry if I was not clear.
Well, the law is the bare minimum. We're allowed to do more.
Absolutely.
There is no gifted education in the state of Illinois, and we provide more.
Absolutely.
So, although I hear what you're saying about May, we could certainly be in a distant zombie apocalypse future, really, low on cash, and that's an expenditure that you've put out there. That's 93. It's a total of
both of them together. Or,
it's $200,000.
Not even.
About that.
Mm-mm.
93,000 for
total.
mandatory, 17 for a total of 110. I'm sorry. Okay, so $110,000, which I appreciate that we're providing that for our students. So I guess I would go for May. We may provide it, but I would like some language in there that acknowledges, so maybe just to prevent that confusion. We do provide that insurance, and we do have students playing at junior high level, and I think we can, at least in our language, go beyond what the state is doing.
Mike?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read the report, it's actually an update on what we were told 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was.
Mr. Yench, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to be the police for the microphone. I'm having a hard time picking up the audio from the board members
Well,
if you're not
normally,
speaking directly
when we
into
had
it.
more money, we each had our own microphone. But anyway, sorry. If I'm reading this report, please tell me if I'm not. What was referred to as voluntary student accident insurance last month is actually been identified as mandatory student accident, and I assume mandatory means what I think it means. We have to have it. Is that, or is it?
Well, by law, we have to have it for 9/12, and we're electing to provide it for EC through 12.
Okay, I'm looking at the report.
At your memo, you refer to mandatory student accident insurance. He's not referring to the catastrophic student accident insurance.
Oh. Right. Okay. Is your question by law or by policy? When I used the term mandatory, meaning that it wasn't something that parents could choose to or not to take. It was that the district was providing it, and it was coverage for the entire student body. So maybe mandatory is not a good word.
It's not legally mandatory.
Not legally mandatory, but it's
Probably not the best word in the context of what we're talking about here. So you're saying the mandatory student accident insurance is optional on our part?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's optional for the board to take it or not take it. But if the board takes it, then it's, everybody is covered, if you will. Parent cannot choose, say, well, I want to be opt out of it. I don't know why you would, but.
Okay, this report makes even less sense now, so I have to reflect on that. I'll allow my colleagues to weigh in.
Any other questions?
So we have 100, I think we're going to have to bring back again for further discussion. What we're going to ask you to focus on, I think Kane set it up pretty well, is now we're clear now that it is provided, that we are currently providing it for all our students. The language question we'll have for the policy is going to be language as we shall provide it, put it in policy, memorialize it in policy, or we shall provide it for 9/12, which is required, but we may provide it for the other grades. And then we will ensure that there's clarity here in this summary.
Kristen?
I just have a suggestion. It says here, catastrophic accident insurance at the mandated benefit level for student athletes in grades 9 through 12. If you just struck in grades 9 through 12, you've still made catastrophic accident insurance at the mandated benefit level the policy. You just haven't specified that it's only grades 9 to 12, which it is not, because we offer it for all, correct? So you would just have said, we're going to comply with the mandate, but we're not specifying that it's only 9 through 12. This is confusing. This policy is confusing because it suggests that we're only carrying it for 9 through 12, correct?
Well, that's what it's required.
I get that, but you're still complying with the policy of mandated benefit levels if you strike in grades 9 through 12.
Then you've written a policy that says you shall provide it for everybody, which is what we are doing now, but we are not required to do by law.
I don't think so, because it's not mandated for everybody currently. So it would just be the insurance at the mandated benefit level for student athletes. It's only mandated in 9 through 12,
We're going to take a look at it.
Oh, I
we'll
see.
bring it back.
See what I'm
Okay,
saying?
I think, but the benefit level is a different part of the law, right? The benefit level is different than who you're covering.
Right. So maybe less is more. That's just one possible idea, is that if we make it a little bit less there, then we're covering the mandated and not necessarily specifying. Just one suggestion.
Perhaps what's nice about putting may is and acknowledges that we are doing it and it is an option to do it. If you take out 9 through 12, who's it getting provided for? But if you say may, we may provide it for other students in grades EC through 11 or BC through 8, then you know where you're going and it's delineated by the population group that you're doing it for. maybe.
Taking out language that's recommended by press, I'd want to definitely send it back
Yeah.
to press to make
Definitely.
sure,
Yeah.
as opposed to adding our own
Yeah,
language that
right,
would
right.
put us in a
I
place.
like
So,
May, because that's,
May's good.
We'll have it back.
But
I just wanted to clarify one last thing. I want to make sure. We do have the catastrophic student accident insurance as it's described here right now
For all.
Yes.
for
Correct.
everybody, which was, I would remind you, what was the genesis for this conversation 2 meetings ago. Why are we doing it only for the 9 through 12? Turns out that's not true. We do it for everybody. So, and I would point out, those same concerns are still there, that why is someone playing football in the high school covered when someone in the junior high is not? And, oh, by the way, we also cover band, we cover drama club, and I would point out again, it's $17,000. I don't know how this has gotten so confused, but,
what are you confused about?
well, this report, for one.
Wasn't confusing to me. Why was it confusing?
Oh, you have I guess you have a different meaning of mandatory than I do, but,
Reading comprehension.
Well,
I understood it.
really?
Yeah.
We'll make some recommendations for the language, and we'll have that back in our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so Section 5. Section 5 we were on schedule for, and Section 5, once we loaded it in here, is pretty overwhelming, and there's a lot of policies within Section 5. We've identified several that we can look at, we think, tonight, and my recommendation to the board would be that those that we don't go through, and it's not going to be necessarily in order, we'll table and come back at our next meeting so that we can ensure that you have appropriate opportunity and time for the discussion with it. So Kane's going to go through, not necessarily in order, he'll say the policy number that we're looking at, and we'll talk about those, and then we'll check where we're at. So Kane?
Okay, and Ms. Hetman, too, might jump in at any point on these. And I think every one of these in 5 also went through work with Maureen Lemon at Addison Brits also. The first one is 535. It's current policy, the anti-nepotism policy. Press's 535 is really about compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act, so it's kind of whole cloth there, and then it moves nepotism as a piece to and renumbers it as 538. And I'll just ask if there are any questions about 535.
Just one comment, Kevin, I know this is be thrilling policy discussion, but if you have homework or something to go through, you can leave the meeting anytime you want to.
Now's the time.
It's just-
9 o'clock is usually a time where we set it for.
Yeah. So the board would welcome you to go home and do your studies or whatever you do, prepare for school, because that's really the important task in front of you. So and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kevin.
Now back to us.
Okay, 538 then is simply our existing anti-nepotism policy. Press doesn't have revisions for that, and it renumbers it as 538. 540 is the ever-exciting communicable and chronic infectious disease policy, and it aligns policy and procedures with the state mandates, Department of Public Health, and just includes other board cross-references there. Are there any questions about that? Okay. 542, bloodborne pathogens is a typographical change, just to put board instead of Board of Education. And 560 is the next one on expenses. There was a question, and I think rightly so, a good question, about including language in here that refers to and directs people to the procurement card policy. And so I think this is a discussion item, and we'll look to bring back language included from that policy and the cross-references where it's appropriate. Not everything in the procurement card policy would necessarily be germane, but there are portions of it that should be. And so we would look to include that in the next reading.
I think it's a great idea, because you put a handbook. You put a policy like this is pretty broad, and the backstop was the procurement card.
And that's still in
process. So
place.
it's
This is a
idea.
good place to have it, though.
No, I think the reference is good, whoever brought it up. Good idea.
5 7 zeros on religious holidays, and it's minor language and statutory reference changes. Any questions on religious holidays?
Questions?
Okay. 580s on court duty, and it refers to the bargaining agreements, and then just refers to policy for employees not covered by the bargaining agreements in terms of their pay and what they pay back if they do serve court duty, jury duty. 5100 is the next one. Oh, give me just a moment. Staff Development Program, just typographical changes, and it's a change in the name from the National Staff Development Council to Learning Forward, which is the same organization that's been renamed. (5105) is staff development. That's a typographical change for ADHD. Again, this is aligned with press. 5105, I'm sorry, that's what I just went over. 5130, responsibilities for internal information, statutory references are the only changes there. Five 140, I think there's a cutoff on my memo, but it is related to solicitations by or from staff. It's simply a policy, gives the designee for the superintendent, and there was a question about this, about what are donations and sales, and it's really meant to prevent unapproved solicitations by anybody on school grounds.
Kristen?
So that was my question, and I just wanted to make clear, the question that came to my mind was programs that are run school-wide that do solicit the donations of staff. They well, among others, families, students, for many times families with special needs, or candy cane carrying, those kinds of things, where we're doing those kinds of things. So is it that those don't have prior approval from the superintendent?
Or designee.
So how do they not fall into that?
Designee is
'Cause the
included in
designee-
that language. So in this case, that would be the building principal.
Okay.
And that's common right now as to what goes on.
Yes, I know it is. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. Okay, got it.
The next one for tonight to start is 5202, salary guides. And there's simply language that's been stricken that's unnecessary for the policy.
So I have a quick question. Kane, that's still, this is the one, did I have my notes written down right? Is this the one where you have 5 years of credit?
Yes.
Okay. And that's, I guess I wanted to ask Carol, that's still common, or when there's exceptions to that, but the standard is 5? It says maximum of 5.
And we do, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that is correct. And we still do hire people who have coming from private schools. So it's
Okay,
good to have this
so
in here.
Up to, do we say up to a maximum of 5 years then? Is that the right terminology?
5 years credit.
And you feel, I guess, what do my colleagues think, or I don't know, what, is that what we're comfortable with? So how often do we go over the 5 years?
Not often.
Okay, so
Not
you're
often.
comfortable, you like the 5 years in there?
Yes.
It's 1/2 credit per year, correct?
That's
Up to
correct.
5. So it's like basically
Thank you.
counting 10 years of experience.
Yes.
But I know we've given more. I recall that, and I'd like you to have that flexibility,
Okay.
certainly, but I just want to make sure this isn't limiting, we get the right person and.
That first bullet point is the teachers having private school experience while not certified will receive salary credit at the rate of no more than 1/2 year for each year taught, up to a maximum of 5 years credit. And then the second bullet point, teachers having private school experience as fully certified teachers.
The differentiator there is that the
Fully
years and the.
Got it, yeah, okay. Good.
Certification.
Good, thank you. We're out of steam there.
5204 is on tutoring. It's really a typographical change. There has been a question about the status of music lessons at the school, which are something that we do and encourage with approval by the principals and the programs. And that's not referred to in here, I think, because it hasn't typically been thought of as tutoring. But certainly I think we need to just look at that language, and if it's appropriate, add something in there that qualifies it for music lessons, so it's clear that that wouldn't be in violation of this policy. We'll look to bring back a line.
Are you suggesting that tutoring and lessons are different?
I think they've been treated differently. So when this policy's been in place for some time, and so I don't think that they were thought of as tutoring the way it was, the way when this policy was written.
I think we just need to have a conversation about differentiating between tutoring and private lessons, because in operations, they're being treated very differently. So it'll be clear that the policies.
How would you consider private lessons?
Well, this policy really is, I believe, addressing the members of our professional staff. The majority that I understand, I think we'd have to do a little bit more investigating, I believe. For example, the example given, music lessons are not necessarily given by our staff, or the tutoring, the individual lessons given by other professional staff. This policy applies to what our staff can and cannot do for tutoring.
I totally agree.
Right, so we just want to make sure, we have to look if there's language we need to put in here that makes that clear to anybody looking at it.
I totally agree. I think that distinction is huge, that you're not double dipping that after school, our teachers in our buildings. I like that clarification. Thank you.
5210 is on resignations. And it assigns existing 210 language to 212 below. 5210 is a new press policy, and the existing 5210 will be in 5212. And it's just related to resignations of positions. Are there any questions about that? And 5212, which was formerly 5210, is, as you can see it here, and this is the one I believe that I was having an earlier conversation about. It includes all of it into 12 and strikes quite a bit of language that's no longer necessary in this policy.
Yeah, we're not going to look at, we'll go to 5222.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went over one we're not going over tonight. I apologize. 5222 is the next one. Summer school teachers, typographical changes only. 5230, maintaining student discipline, typographical revisions, and cross references to board policy. And the last one scheduled for this evening is 5240, related to the suspension of employees.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Nothing. I don't.
The largest change in 52.
Yeah, I see. It's just a cross-reference. I got it. Okay.
And not to disappoint you, Kane, but we do have 5272 that we'll do tonight also.
Sure.
Did we do 5240 already?
That's the one he was just on?
Yep, 5240 is the suspension of employees section, including
No, I was behind on the
conditions for-
cross-reference one. Okay.
including conditions for repayment or compensation of benefits for suspended employees who are then
Yes, got it.
Right.
terminated. And 5272 is retitled simply to make clear what that section is about.
Okay, so according to my notes, the policies that we went through this evening, we will bring all of them back for potential action by the board at the next meeting with the following notes. Policy 560, we're going to incorporate a cross-reference to procurement procedures in there. We'll still bring it back. I think that's a simple change, and if the board's not comfortable, then we can set that aside. And then we will bring back for discussion again. We won't ask for action on 5204 to make sure that we're very clear on that one. The rest we'll bring for action, and then the remaining policies in Section 5, if it's okay with the board, we'll have a first discussion at our next meeting, and we'll look at just kind of bumping back our policy discussions. You okay with that?
We also had on 204. We were going to change some language on 204 to distinguish between for the tutoring.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said.
I'm just going to bring it back as read. Yep.
Yep.
That one, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Under Armour?
Okay. In the spirit of looking at cost saving and alternate revenue, we've been presented with an opportunity from Under Armour for entering an agreement to equip Naperville Central Athletics. This is really kind of a first for us, and looking at a couple of our policies that have been updated previously. So there's been some questions raised on this. I think Kane has worked with both Bob Ross, Brad Kaufman, as well as the staff at Naperville Central in bringing this forward to the board, and they've kind of been working on this for several weeks. So, Kane, you want to provide some overview, and then maybe some of the questions we know we may have, and then we'll go for it from there, further conversation with the board.
Okay. Simply what's in the cover memo, it is an opportunity to kind of dip our toe into seeking alternative revenue, and there is some relationship to 825, which is advertising policy, but it's very prescribed per what's in the agreement, and we think it's a good opportunity to see if this is the kind of agreement that can provide value to the program and provide some alternative revenue while giving those programs the ability to maintain consistent with their mission.
So we've tried to keep our schools equal in a lot, separate but equal, or however you want to say it. So, how do you feel about doing one school and not the other?
Well, it's a new opportunity, and we think for a new opportunity, it's actually, in a way, it's got some advantages to doing it for one school, because we can see how it develops and how it goes and get some feedback and build on it as a success, and potentially then go to the next school with a better package, so to speak.
So the alternative revenue is not actually cash, though. It comes back to us in merchandise.
There is a small cash amount that's included each year.
The $2,400.
Yeah, the $2,400. But the other portion, the larger portion, which is up to 15% of the purchase, all the purchases provided as a credit for other purchases.
And so, say cross country makes up 4%, and boys swimming makes up 6%. Will they get that exact amount back, or will some sports? How will that be divvied up?
The athletic director would work with the coaches, but I'm fully assume in conversation that it would be equitable to meet the needs of those programs.
And then, I was going to ask you about, so one of the things I did look up, which made me feel a lot more comfortable, was kind of the scores that Under Armour gets as not using sweatshops and things like that, which was a consideration, when you dive a little deeper into that, because, some clothing manufacturers do have that reputation. And so I was just, of the parameters we consider, that was one of the things we hadn't talked about, is kind of ethical types of businesses in what we do. I mean, I think we assume that, but we didn't talk about that at all. So I wanted to see if, if at some point bringing that policy back and including something different of that, because I think, you'd hate to think that our kids are wearing clothes that kids are stuck in shops making and can't get any education.
I think I would want to talk to our attorney about language that would reflect that without putting us in a position. There are free speech issues and open forum issues,
Right.
so we'd want to make sure that we weren't in violation of those. But I think that's an opportunity for us to talk to them about language that could be included in that policy.
Thank you, Kane.
Go ahead.
So we're going to get 40% off Under Armour's retail price
Mhm.
and on clothing and 35% on footwear.
Mhm.
And then it looks like those backs. And then if they're getting some back, and then they get T-shirts if they go to a state championship team, they provide that. Did athletic director at Central feel that this was a good deal? Did the coaches feel excited about this? Did they think it was a good deal? Was this going to save them the school money?
Well, they think the alternative revenue and the discounts will provide an opportunity to use other revenue they have in other places that'll be more effective, or simply to be better with their dollars. So yes, they're excited about it. It is new, so I mean, they want to be, there's some things in there about where things are placed and how they're placed, and I think they want to be very judicious and discreet about that. It's not about some, it's not a program that's meant to set off fireworks yet. It's meant a program to build value for the athletics program on the whole and see how that works out.
Okay, thank you.
Jackie?
So, Kane, a couple questions I had. And I think the only reason I'm probably have more detailed questions is this is the first time through. What would be interesting to me is just to look at how this whole program would look, how these numbers all pan out over the last 2 years at Central. So at Central, these amounts were spent on uniforms, on all. What is the real value? I guess that's a cost-benefit analysis. And I don't mean to get into operations, but in this particular case, is this amount of money worth it? And my bigger concern is it's 5 years. So now when we have a chlorine problem at Central and the kids can't practice, and these things have happened before, and they have to go to North, do the banners go when those kids are wearing Adidas things? My bigger concern, the way it's worked out before, junior highs haven't always wanted to do the same promotional programs. They have said, because when I was on the home and school side, some schools said it benefits them, other ones said, nope, really don't want to do that magazine thing. And the thought was, we're doing it as a group. We're all going to do it. We're all going to do the same thing. So I guess if this is such a sweet spot and such a great thing, of course I understand you don't all... If you made it for a shorter period of time, 5 years is a long time. So what about this? Did North look at this? Pardon me?
It's Central. No, I know North knows about it. I don't know what detail they've dived into at this point. It also had to do with where they are in their cycle of purchases and where they are with their vendor relationships.
Well,
so,
I guess in one board member, I'd like to look at it on a macro level for both high schools. And if North looks up and says, hey, it doesn't make sense, you go ahead and do it, let's at least look at it from that perspective as a whole, we want the where I'm coming from, Kane. So our websites, we want our websites to be uniform. We want all the schools to be uniform. They can have their own spirit. So now we're branding a school a little differently. Now they're going to be Under Armour. But yet our other school, I would just like to understand, did they go through all the traps? Did they think it's the same thing? There's a very seasoned athletic director there. Interesting. And a question I always have, Superintendent, what are your fellow superintendents? What are the traps other places have run into? And what are the benefits? Why not learn from someone? So, my 2 cents.
I have a question, but you can go. Go, Donna.
I guess my concern revolves around all teams shall exclusively wear and have up to 5 years to transition into. So my concern with that is that I know some teams have, replaced their uniforms within the last year, and I don't know what the normal turnover is on uniforms. I got to think it's probably longer than 5 years. So as we look at some kind of cost analysis, is
I'll get some more detail on that.
Yeah.
I think 5 years is somewhere near the cycle. I mean, I'll get some more details from Mr. Lutzenkirchen, but that was part of, he felt comfortable with that cycle. I think if it were too short, then, saying you have to get everybody on board in 2 years, that's not going to work. The idea is not to get us to just spend a lot of money. That would be self-defeating.
Right.
And he wouldn't agree to that.
Right.
He wouldn't think that's a good idea. So I think it'll fit in with the cycle, but I'll get some more feedback on that, at least in my conversations. That's my impression.
And then my other concern would be, how much input came from the coaching staff on this as well, because, I remember looking at, I think it was when I did bills and claims once, and like one team in particular that is very uniform driven, had things from 6 different vendors because they couldn't get exactly what they wanted from one vendor. So my concern is that we're committing to be head to toe here in uniform for Under Armour. Is that going to mesh with what all the coaches as well would like?
Yeah, my impression from talking to Mr. Lutzenkirchen again is that it's all part of a balance in terms of getting the kinds of discounts and getting the agreement in place. Nothing's going to be holistically perfect because of the reason you said, but the feedback he's gotten in walking through this with people is that this is worth doing. But I can certainly get more detailed feedback in order to be helpful.
I had the 5-year concern also, because I just in looking at some of the things I've seen in terms of the junior high programs, sometimes when we get new uniforms, we pass them down to the team below, the grade below, and that kind of thing. And so I'm just wondering, even if we're replacing some in a 5-year cycle, are we sending some of those other ones down the chain that would still be high school? And then we're causing ourselves to have to, at least the way I interpret this, everybody, 5 years, every single uniform in this entire school has to be Under Armour. Isn't that correct based on this agreement? Correct. Every single thing, head to toe. So that was my exact concern, is this question of normally we would have re-outfitted head to toe every single sport on every level, every team.
I'll have to confirm with Mr. Lutzenkirchen. I don't know that's the way. That's the way this says here. But in my conversations with him, my impression is, starting with varsity and going forward. But again, the 5-year cycle was not one that he expressed a concern about based on his experience of purchasing uniforms and going through the
two things
process.
are that we'll seek clarity and then work with legal counsel on language in the agreement if need be. The clarity on the level of sports, is this applicable to all? As it's written, that may suggest that, or is it just varsity? The second thing is I know a question and concern has been raised a couple of times regarding the 5 years. Our legal counsel has reviewed it. It was comfortable with the ability to opt out, but I could sense that we would want maybe a little bit stronger or clearer language. That's an opportunity for us to opt out, so we can work with our counsel on what that language would look like.
Good, Susan.
I know some of our local business partners have been just really incredible supporters of running programs, wrestling programs from the place in Lisle. That's a huge effect upon them as well. They come in, they teach the kids how to buy new shoes when they're needed. They help fit them here locally. How does that?
Yeah, so that's a good point regarding the purchase of school purchased equipment. The contract does individual students who purchase their own equipment, such as running shoes, can purchase from whatever vendor, any style that's appropriate for them. So that wouldn't exclude them.
But they still buy the shorts and other. They say
right. So that's right. I understand that concern. I wasn't trying to take all of it away. I just parts of it.
Because they've been really good long-term.
So you hear head to
business
toe
partners.
doesn't necessarily mean it's what we provide.
Right.
Right. Correct.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
But I already went to.
Just some other details on the contract.
Can you speak into the mic? I'm sorry.
Since you didn't have you don't have the number that Jackie was asking about what the actual 15% would be worth.
No, the last estimate would be between $15,000 and $20,000 in purchases a year, so it'd be 15% on that. Would be, that I didn't pull the exact numbers. I asked him, how much do you typically spend?
Oh, that's fine.
He said, I estimate I'll be spending between $15,000 and $20,000, so the 15% would be off of that.
Got it. And so, having said that, it mentions that it's for coaches' products. What does that include and what doesn't it include? Is it just like the coaches' warm-up jackets and his whistles?
It's anything they would normally don for practice or a game that Under Armour provides.
The 15% goes back to the coaches for the coaches' wardrobe or for the team?
It goes for coaches, it goes for the coaches. It's a credit. It's not to them per se. And it goes for anything that they would normally be purchasing, the team would be purchasing for the coach for practice or for a game.
That is currently being purchased out
Yes,
of the
currently,
district at the athletic
yes.
director's budget. And so that would then allow that money to be used for
There's
equipment for the program.
a set of things that are purchased, regularly, depending it's new coaching staff or new coaching needs.
Now, when you talk about the head-to-toe exceptions, where is that defined?
It's after the memo.
But no, in the contract.
Yeah.
In the contract.
I don't see it in the contract.
Yeah, memos are nice. Contracts are better.
But it's when it says team, the idea is it's a team purchase. So team purchases are made through the department.
It says all teams also.
Uh-huh.
Shall
And then the
exclusively
teams-
wear and use, including without limitation, footwear. So I just want to make sure, that
We'll make sure it's clear.
Certain things soccer is, very individual, cross-country, tennis.
Specific question I asked Mr. Lutzenkirchen directly, and he confirmed with the vendor, but also the representative, that this was about team purchases that they normally make already as a team. It's not the idea that they're going to go out and purchase things that they wouldn't normally purchase.
Right, but you understand my concern just reading the contract language.
Absolutely.
I just got to ask, what are Under Armour inflatables?
Footballs, basketballs, any.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, not the big.
Yeah, no, they're just actually.
No, okay, that makes.
Yeah.
When I read it, that's what I
Yeah,
read.
that's how I read it the first time too. And as I pointed, I think I mentioned in one conversation, the IHSA already has an exclusive with Wilson. All IHSA schools are required to use Wilson products. So it says best efforts in there. So there wouldn't be any use of those for normally, potentially for practices or something.
The only, I heard Dan say something about the termination. I couldn't agree more because, basically the only way to get out of it is if they do something that reflects unfavorably upon the school, which is, that's not just an easy way out, in my opinion. So I'm glad he's going to address that, at least see if we can. And then the final piece is the exclusive use of facilities. Jackie alluded to this.
Could you tell me what line you're reading for that?
For termination?
Oh, okay.
The last one. Team members, Under Armour, or team dealer commit any act are involved in any occurrence which in the sole but reasonable discretion of Under Armour or the school reflects unfavorably.
Oh, no, I saw that, but I was talking about exclusive facilities.
Oh, the exclusive use of facilities. That's under their banners. Shall receive placement of 2 banners for display on field or on court for each school team. Aside from Under Armour and team dealers, no other manufacturer, distributor, marketer, or seller of athletic apparel, accessories, or footwear shall have the right to place signage at schools, teams, facilities. So facilities, I assume, includes everything. So the question becomes a couple things that, there's always the unforeseen, and the devil's in the details. But
sure.
For instance, I believe our baseball fields belong to the Park District.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a team facility, and do we need their permission to put signs up there?
We'd have to talk to them about putting signage up there because we don't own it. We have an agreement with them about its use, so we would first refer to the agreement about its use. and see what direction that.
Because I don't know if we've started using the West Street fields either, which are by the Park District that we use. So they're going to be lacrosse fields, I understand. So, does that apply? Another one is when our facilities, because it doesn't talk about when we're using it, but when our facilities are used by other organizations, let's say swim meets and stuff, and let's say it's a city meet and Kiefer's wants to put a banner up because they have a deal with the Park District or an individual swim team. What's the impact there? Because they often have it in our two swimming pools, and obviously other people in the summer have swim meets in our swimming pools. So what's the impact when other teams are using our facilities or other organizations?
If it were for the Park District, I'd have to refer to the Park District agreement and see first. Okay. But I'll refer to our council and see.
Okay.
Excuse me, what they say.
I think that was it. Everybody else covered everything else, so thank you.
Kristen, do you have another question?
Well, I think Donna was waiting before. Did you have another? Are you done? Okay.
Oh, I did.
Yes, I do.
Oh, but you actually addressed it.
Okay.
Okay. My last question is just with regard to one of the statements in the contract, and it's under Under Armour and team dealers' obligations to school. At the very bottom, it says, Under Armour shall provide school a branding stipend to rebrand school's campus. Is that just these two banners, or is there some?
Yeah.
Or, I just, it's
I'll find out
such
details,
a
but
big
it's just
phrase.
part of the, yeah. It's just, I believe it's just part of the kind of cash remuneration for the agreement, but I think it's towards the banners and towards their placement and installation.
Okay, but that's a pretty. It's not spelled out exactly what it means. So.
Okay.
All right, so we will.
hold on.
Oh, we have more questions. I was
Yeah,
gonna
why not?
Say we're already bringing it back for
Yeah,
discussion, not for action.
I know. But
That's
just
fine. Yep. Mhm.
okay. So under the termination clause, I prefer to see something that says termination for convenience, or something along those lines. We can terminate for a material breach of any term, but actually Under Armour has more power to terminate than we do, and so we've got to have some mechanism that if it's not, you've said that it's $20,000 a year is about what we're going to spend, or
Between 15 and 20 was Mr. Lutzenkirk.
15 and 20. So let's just call it $2,000 a year in product to $10,000 over the life of the contract. If that doesn't prove to be like really beneficial in the first 3 years, we may want out of the contract. There'd be no material breach.
That's in addition to the 30% and
Yeah,
other retail discounts.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm talking about the 15% back and so forth. I mean, so I think more of a convenience. And the other thing, it's got the free products come at the end of the year after everything else is shipped.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little confused as to what that means. Is at the end of the sports year, end of the school year, or?
So it's defined as it would be at the end of the school year, okay? But in talking with Mr. Lutzenkirk, and he's talked with if you'll notice, there's the team rep, who's really a third-party rep, okay, who places all the orders and does everything, and they would work to, based on what he's purchasing, to front him the credit to purchase what he needed to during the course of the year.
Yeah, it's not. Just as an aside, some of the things you've said are not really contained inside the contract itself, and what you've said is good, but the language probably needs to reflect what the full understanding is, and in deference to the coach. Verbal agreements, once the contract is signed, they're done. So.
And I'm appreciative of looking at alternate revenue sources. However, what I don't want to do is for the board to get less, the board to have so many questions on something that it looks or perhaps reflects that we're not excited or interested in something staff wants. So when I sit back and listen to all these questions, I think, how do we better vet this so that we have these questions? I want to understand how we, the sister high school or brother high school, where they are in the process. It's super important that the staff's done a lot of work on this, and we have questions, maybe more than normal here, because of what's been presented. So we all need to learn from that. So that's my point.
I just want to, I agree completely. It's also just new territory. So
Right.
in forging this, and there's only a few places that are trying this and doing this way,
Right.
and it, could be very beneficial to us, but because it's new, it's unclear
Right.
as to what all the parameters are so far ahead of time. So this is why we go through this process, so we can begin to understand.
Correct. But I guess another way, superintendent, our board leadership, they have ways to understand kind of from all of us what kinds of things we'd like to look at, and a cost-benefit analysis, or how would this benefit us, or what do other schools do, or what does the sister school do? That I just don't want to take the fun and interest away from people that have spent so much time on it. I think everybody.
Okay, on to, any other questions? On to discussion with action.
Well, there's somebody who's been very patient, who just smiled, who's sitting out in the audience. I know been waiting for potential action by the board on item 9.01, an agreement with the Naperville Education Support Professionals Association. The school district and NESPA have reached an agreement on a 3-year contract effective July 1. So we're bringing that contract to the Board of Education for action this evening. NESPA membership had ratified the contract at an August 19th meeting that the membership had upon return this year. A couple of the highlights regarding the contract: NESPA members will receive salary increases of 3.2% in year 1, 2.5% in year 2, 2% in year 3, and no step advancement. Minor revisions to health care benefits consistent with the requirements of the Affordable Care Act, and staff development better aligned to members' professional needs. Majority of a lot of the other work was a lot of language cleanup. I would like to say that I think this is a contract that reflects the great contributions that NESPA and its members make to our kids every day. They're important partners, an important part of the excellence that we have in this school district. And you think about some of the just let's go to the ACT report that Tim gave earlier. It's not lost on us the contributions that members of the association make every day to the success of our kids in our district. So I'd like to thank them. I think this is a very fair and a very good contract, fair to our taxpayers, fair to our community, but also fair to our NESPA membership. So congratulations to the bargaining teams on the great work that they've done. We'll answer any questions the board has.
Any questions from the board on the contract? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the contract as presented.
I move approval of 9.01 Naperville Education Support Professionals Association Agreement as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Riley?
Yes.
Fielden?
Yes.
Rumper?
Yes.
Waukee?
Yes.
Yench?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. Yeah, absolutely. We can applaud them.
Next item, 9.20, second reading on policies.
Right, these are out of section 4. There were multiple readings. Kane, any updates on any of these from the last discussion?
No, there were no further directions from the board to revise any of these any further from the last meeting, so they are up for action tonight.
Any other further questions or discussion from the board?
Can we approve them as a whole, do we think?
If they're no,
Unless somebody wants one pulled?
Well, no, not
Yep,
pulled.
you're
but
right.
We did have a
Thank
note
you.
in terms of
We did have something that I
4.30.
wanted to note.
Yep.
There was a question at our, thank you for the reminder, at our last board meeting regarding compliance with, sorry, I just got to find my note. Compliance with section, with 440, or 430, sorry, and the timeline on that. And that what we're working on is over the next 12 to 30 months, we'll work to align the long-term portfolio to fully comply with this policy as it's written. And our goal will be to have the realignment finished prior to the end of 2017, and we'll be in a position at that point to repurchase the 2008 bonds.
Thank you for your provision of that additional information. I think it's really important that we are working towards that as fast as possible and in good fiduciary work with our district. So thank you for providing that time frame so that we know kind of what to expect in that regard.
okay. We take a motion to approve all the policies at once.
I move to approve all of the policies presented in 9.02, including 4.10, 4.15, 4.30, 4.80, 4.110, as presented.
Is there a second? For motion and a second, roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Yench.
Aye.
Price.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Romberg. Yes. Fielden.
Yes.
Wonky. Yes. Ready.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 10, new business. Item 11, old business. May have a schedule of events. Anything you want to highlight there, Dan?
I think I'd highlight first of this year's Focus 203s next week, September 16th at 7 p.m. at Naperville Central High School. Getting late. And Thursday morning over at Grace Church, the presentation will be State of the District.
Very good. All right. If there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Sunday. She thought she was meeting Thursday, but she's leaving Sunday. Is Thursday good for you? Like coffee at 10?
Yes, sir. Did you guys look at that? Should that be there?
That's current, so go down.
No, I know it's current. Well, it's down here too. Just read the sentence.
Yeah, no, I know. I remember because you sent a note about it, didn't you?
It was the only two things I had in section 5, that and the tutoring for.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't get a note about this one then, so we'll fix it for next time.
I mean, it doesn't look right, am I?
No, it's not right.
Okay.
That